Oh, and that tea is very cold and gone, so not an issue. Been watching some videos this week of Americans try English food. One of them did have an interesting point. The reason why Americans think that English food is bad is because of the stories that were told by the GIs returning from Europe after being staged in England for D-Day. And yes, the food was really bad because everybody had been on rationing for about 5 years. So, you can have 2 eggs a week, or you can have one side of beef a month, and decent food, herbs and spices, no. And not only couldn't you get them because they need to be shipped from wherever, but also they would be incredibly expensive, so most people wouldn't have access. So yes, the food was bland, the food was plain, and the food was not the greatest. A lot of leftover stuff, lots of sort of make do with what we've got, and then see what interesting we can make. So things like Bubble and Squeak were cabbage and mashed potatoes that had been left over from the meal the previous day, and just mixed together. The cabbage made the potato go further, and just used up what they had, because that's the way you had to do it. And I mean, my parents lived under rationing all the way through part of the 1950s as well, because the supply lines and the food supply had not been re-established post-Second World War. So yes, the stories of bad English food really stems back from that, and has become part of a national consciousness for Americans, as opposed to personal experience. So these American folks are trying stuff like the full English breakfast, and they're like, oh, okay, whatever, and get to try it, and it's like, oh wow, this is actually really flavorful, flavoursome. Sausage toad, which is sausages in a, I think one of them described it as a biscuit batter, but it's really not. It's much more spongy than a biscuit. I don't know of anything American-wise that could be described in the same way, but Brits use the batter for you basically put a couple of sausages in a baking tray, pour this batter over the top and bake it, and then gravy. Everything has gravy, and gravy adds an awful lot to the flavour. But we also use exactly the same batter for what's known as Yorkshire pudding, which we tend to have with the big roast meal. So Brits what is it? They don't have Thanksgiving, but they have turkey at Christmas instead. And you would tend to have turkey, roast potatoes, sometimes roast carrots and Yorkshire puddings, and all the trimmings, gravy and everything else. So Yorkshire puddings tend to go, as I said, with a big roast meal rather than something you have on the side, or you cover sausages in them. English fish and chips, again. I have not found a good, decent fish and chips in America. I've lived in California, Texas, Probably not surprising with Texas because we live nowhere near the coast, so it's not like you can get fresh fish. I understand if you live in somewhere like Seattle, there are some excellent fish restaurants because, well, you know, the boat's right there and the fish just came off it. But deep inland, it's very difficult to get fresh fish. And yeah, that's true of England. You know, in England, you're about 100, 200 miles from the coast. It doesn't take but a couple of hours to get fresh fish to your shop. Although, traditionally, you know, when people go on vacation to the beach or day trip to the beach one weekend, they'll do the fish and chips and the ice cream, you know, on the promenade, because that's a thing, and that's where the freshest fish are. And once you've had that, you're kind of spoiled for, you know, Long John Silver's or whatever. It's like, it's fish and chips, but it's really not the greatest. You know, it's, I don't know, it's not. I've been spoiled. I don't rate Long John Silver's as a fish and chip shop. Some of the smaller restaurants, however, are really good. Around the area where my wife's family live, there was a small cafe in the town where she worked, family-owned business, and we were there. I mean, we're talking probably 10 years ago. We went to visit her family, and she was sort of like, "Oh yeah, we need to go here. This serves really great food." And we went. They had trout on the menu, not a regular. That was the special of the day, and oh my goodness, that was awesome. And it wasn't classic, you know, battered fish with chips. It was trout with appropriate trimmings for an American family, but it was awesome because it tasted really, really good because it was fresh. I've had, I can't remember who I was talking to. I think I was talking to the one of my physical therapists, and I was saying, I'm not a big fan of turkey. And the reason I'm not a big fan of turkey is I don't find much flavour in turkey. You really need to have turkey with flavourful stuff. Typically English gravy, cranberries, you know, just something to give it flavour, because it is the most flavourless meat I've eaten. Back when I was a kid, I used to find chicken was really, you know, had a quite strong flavour. Now chickens, you know, they're getting to be like turkeys. They're white meat that has little to no flavour. I came up with a silly theory that big fat chickens are as flavoursome as the small chickens we used to get when I was a kid. It's just that the flavour is so diluted across all the meat that it doesn't taste of anything. But yeah, the most flavoursome bird I've eaten that I remember is pheasant, which my dad's boss had shot the previous day. So fresh pheasant, or you know, fresh meat, that was eating a natural, probably flavour-rich, natural food source for it, albeit bugs and insects and what have you, but not the processed garbage that is fed to factory chickens and factory turkeys to fatten hormones to fatten them up. There's something to be said for eating natural stuff rather than overfed garbage. Why I'm happy, one of our friends is a beef farmer because his beef's good. His pigs are good too. Although we don't get pork that often from him. Pork is kind of awkward because I want the bacon. The rest of the stuff, yeah, that's good. But I want the bacon. And we go through the bacon in a month, and then we've now stuck with all the rest of the pig. And I can't order another pig just for the bacon because I've still got 70% of the rest of the first pig to eat. So it takes us a little bit longer to go through it. Cows aren't too bad on that count because my wife does a lot of cooking with hamburger, but there's nothing to stop you because all the meat costs the same amount regardless. Whether it's cut into a steak or a roast or whatever, you can always take a steak and not feel too bad about chopping it up into chunks to have as a stir fry or something like that. Because technically you paid for the meat, and the meat is, it costs you the same whether it's made, minced up into hamburger or cut into a nice steak. That's all I'm saying. Now, typically I don't, but on occasion, we've run out of hamburger, I want to do a thing, well, let's take a steak and chop it up and make it into a stew or something. Okay, we're coming up to 10 to 11 real time. Don't know how far through we are. Obviously, course play's finished, so the subside. Oh dear, there's been an accident. Oh no. I'm sure they'll figure it out. But so subsoiling's finished. I don't think there's enough light now for me to get out there and spray, so I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow to get the sprayer back on this tractor and get the work done. I'll try and get this job done. Stick it on autopilot and contracts. Contracts, there we go. 63% done. So I think we've been going for about an hour on this, thereabouts. So as I said, probably about 4 o'clock we'll be finished with this job. Then I can run over to the store, pick up the rest of the seed. There should be about 400-ish litres left in that bag. And then we'll get this back over to the farm. Grab the Axion as well. I mean, normally I'd have done this job with the Axion, but somebody had to do ploughing. And then, I did put in a special order, I think about 2 weeks ago. No, yes. Was it this week? I can't remember. It might have been last week. I put in a special order to a British store, online British store, and I actually bought some, it's something we do occasionally, so I bought some stuff for the kids for Easter. and then I did buy a couple of Cornish pasties, which are just a big pastry. It's sort of a hand pastry, very big, and designed for Cornish miners as the meal they had when they were down the mine. So it was filled with meat, potatoes, turnips, whatever, in a pastry crust. And the pastry crust was pinched together on one side, and that was notionally where the miner held the pastry. So in order to avoid eating too much dust that you get on your hands from mining, and designed to be a complete all-in-one meal. So I got a couple of those. I got some British sausages, the big ones, and some British bacon, hot cross buns, which I'm not sure when you're supposed to eat them. I think you're supposed to eat them Thursday next week. Maybe Sunday, but I'll probably do them on Sunday if the kids are here, or the following week if they're not. They're just buns with currants in and either a cross cut into the top, or sort of a cream cross on top. You heat them up, stick butter in them, stick jam in them, and have them at Easter time. So I got a pack of those. I got some Welsh cakes, which are just very flat pastries with currants in that you heat up and just eat as a snack. Sure, there was something else I got. I can't remember. I think it was just the bacon, the bangers, and the Welsh cakes, which I ate, and the hot cross buns, which we'll have. Mrs. Osa probably won't have any. She's not into dried fruit. And if nobody else wants them, I'll eat them all, because I'll have them. Though it might take me 2 days to go through them, because I don't think I can have 4 in one sitting. That would be a little excessive. It is seriously getting dark. $75% done. Okay. But yeah, that ended up, I think it was $100 just for the food, and then $100 shipping because I had to pay UPS next day because frozen stuff, and not a good plan to leave frozen stuff in transit for days, especially not when they're using UPS, because UPS do not refrigerate their shipments. But with the sausages, we'll either be able to have bangers and mash or sausage toad. Either way, good taste of home, which Mrs. Osa likes too. So it's all a good thing. Our contract is 80% done, so it looks like a couple more rows and we should be good here. We still have 730 litres of seed in the tank, so there's enough room for as I said, I think there's about 400 left at the store that we'll have to go and pick up. Yeah, I think the big saggy bags, they don't work with a forklift. I should have gone with the pallet bags, the ones in the little blue rack. Because you can hoist them on the forks. Oops. And you're lifting from the bottom rather than the top. Now, one thing I'm looking at, which is potentially a little bit concerning, is if I do sell the Renault, that is my loader tractor. Now, Merlot is front loader, far better than a loader tractor, so it would entice me to use the Merlot for more lifting purposes. And again, we've really not done much in the way of lifting on the farm. I can see us needing to do it if I can eventually afford a cow shed. There will be shoveling and lifting and what have you. But with the Merlot, the only thing I'm doing is cleaning up the silage clamps and pushing anything that's not in the clamp into the clamp before I cover it. So I'm not really that desperate for a loader, but it kind of would be nice for the option to be there. And like I said, I put loader arms on the Renault because it seemed like a good idea at the time when we didn't have a telehandler. But things the Renault can do is we're rapidly running short on jobs it's able to do, especially as we increase the size of our equipment. We did buy the used spreader, which I'm using for lime, and I have noticed it does empty rather quickly. So while it's not a slow job, it is it does entail me going back to the yard frequently, and so that's a little bit of an issue. But even the bigger one isn't that much better. I think typically the problem is when I'm liming the fields, it's usually the grass fields or the maize fields, and we are needing, because we're harvesting those 3-4 times a year, it needs a lot of pH replenishment. Whereas with arable fields, while sort of you only have to lime the field once every 3 harvests, if you do lime it every harvest, you use practically nothing. So the 2 barley fields we have will probably use a tiny amount of lime, and as we increase the number of arable fields we have, if we lime them every year, then it shouldn't be a big drain on even a small lime spreader. Come on, tractor. Oops. It looks like the accident cleaned itself up. That's good. Also taken time out to watch the Halo TV series, and I can't say I completely understand it, probably because I've never played any of the games. Not my type of game, but I figured, well, it's a thing, I could watch it. And while I think there is a certain amount that is explained during the course of the show. I think they may be relying potentially a little bit too much on people who've played the game and their knowledge of the game and what they learn playing the game. So, but still, I watched it. It's okay. And then last week I watched the Reacher series, season 2. That's quite a good series as well. And you don't have to know anything about the sort of the universe it's set in, because it's kind of set in ours. And the chief bad guy in that series, or in season 2, was the gloopy Terminator from Terminator 2. He's kind of a good actor. Like the stuff he's in. Okay, let's put us back on cruise control somehow. That button there, and 98%. Okay, next row we should be done, if not this one. Only 4 o'clock and it is pitch dark. All right. And there we go. Contract finished. Raise. Turn off. Fold.